going to start off, we have a question from Susie who says, "Dear Mandy, which game reserve was this? Sounds awesome. Love nature."
So I went to Askari Game Reserve. It's just in the Magaliesberg. It's a reported 4-star, but I would say that it's not. I think the conference facility is 4-star, more than the thing. It's not as wheelchair accessible as we thought it would be. However, I did manage, and I think for a day trip, it's fantastic because you could go out in the morning, have a spa treatment, have a lunch, and then do an afternoon game drive and come home because it's about an hour and 20 minutes from Joburg. So it's something that you could do in a day. But there are lots of other places that you can find and that are available. And so I hope that I've answered that question.
Definitely, yes. And then I see George Lowe asked or commented, "I heard the cost of COVID tests in euros is very high." And then can you comment on that?
Yes, it is. Obviously, you're having to convert your rand into the euros in the first place, or pounds. And so even here, it's what, 1,000, between 900 and 1,500 rand for a test. So it's quite high in the euros. You're going to multiply that by 20. So it becomes expensive. There are sometimes the tests at the airports are done without a charge. However, it depends. They don't always do them, and they sometimes make you pay. And again, I'm sorry to sound so vague, but it's all up in the air. It's individual. Travelers will give you, every traveler will give you a different story.
Yeah, and of course, it also depends on your own budget. For someone who can, for someone who has quite a lot of money and a quite bigger budget, the COVID test might not be that expensive. But for someone traveling on like a very small budget, a couple of euros means a lot.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. And then Raven actually commented, and he said, "With a possible second wave on the way and travel precautions that might increase, what can we include in our local travel plans to still make it enjoyable and have value for money?" And then he also mentions that you can contact Quasar at 0860 rolling or 031 767 0352, the main office number, for mobility equipment to hire.
Okay, so the first portion of his question, yes, we seem to be having a second wave. It's a lot less extreme than it was with the Europe and things like that. I've been noticing the daily numbers are going up. We were in the 900s and now we're over the thousands again. I think we have to be mindful of what's happening, and so planning is important. Try and plan something that you don't have to book months in advance, obviously like a cruise or something like that. If you can do a holiday that you can book maybe 3 or 4 weeks in advance, that might be a way. Or everybody's got cancellation or fees or clauses in. And with COVID, a lot of the people are not saying don't cancel, just rebook again. So if you've paid for your holiday, you just reschedule the date. So they keep your money, but you go at a later date. And I think people have to understand that. And a lot of the establishments around South Africa have that facility, but you need to find that out before you do your booking. And I think, that's the wise thing. And as I said, it goes again and again and again on planning in advance. So make sure I always say, make sure your exit clauses you are certain of your exit clauses on any contract you sign. And really, when you're making a booking or a reservation with anybody, it's like a contract. So I do think you need to look at that, and it's very valid that you say to the person, okay, I'm booking for December now, but what happens if we go back to level 3 and we're not allowed to travel? And you need to have that in writing from the people. Don't only get it over the phone. Please make sure you have it in writing, because that's the legal way of being able to follow up anything. So I hope that helps. And I answered your question, Raven.
Great. So thank you so much, Mandy. I see Chris has joined us. Mandy, I don't know, maybe you want to quickly take the lead and just ask Chris a couple of questions.
Sure.
Chris from Chris, from my side, I'm really just curious about the accessible trails and that's available. So maybe you can touch on that, but I'll leave it up to Mandy to
no,
ask you
that's
some
what I was
questions.
going to be chatting about. So carry on.
Oh, okay.
Right, hi, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Good, yeah. So, you know, SANParks is quite a complex organization. So my primary job function is not in tourism per se. So I think Mandy has covered things a lot better and more thoroughly than I could. I'm involved more in the interpretation side of the business, but obviously working in SANParks, you pick up information from the other parks. And yeah, just to start off with accessible trails. So I'm down in the western Southern Cape, or the western part of the eastern part of the Western Cape in Garden Route National Park. And we've got a couple of accessible trails down here that are sort of walk-in things that on the side of the N2 where people can traveling between Port Elizabeth and Cape Town, or on a more micro level between Plettenberg Bay and Knysna, can park their cars and go and wheel around accessible boardwalks. But most of the parks have some level of accessibility where they can get in and people can get out of the chair, because I think what Mandy said just now, the sort of healing and almost spiritual power of nature, is so important. And it sounds like a no-brainer that if you're in a park and you're in your own vehicle and you're out in the open air, you're not going to be at risk for catching things like this. The danger is when you're using publicly accessible facilities like ablutions, and here at the Garden Route offices, where a number of public are coming in from the outside. Like Mandy, I'm paranoid, so I travel with a little hand sanitizer, and every time I have to touch a door handle, I quickly spray it. And the same with bathroom taps and toilet flushing mechanisms. So it's just again, to sort of reiterate what you said, is trying to be responsible within yourself and not do anything that's going to put you at risk. When it comes to the sort of protocols that are in place in all the national parks, SANParks has sort of stringent cleaning things in place. And I think what you described, Mandy, where you couldn't get into your unit in time because they were doing that thorough deep clean sounds and keeping with what's going on in the parks. And the other thing that is a bit frustrating from our point of view is, because we're a parastatal organization, we often get dictated to by government in terms of what we can and cannot do. For instance, we wanted to open up our parks much sooner than we were actually allowed to. So there was a number of months where we were just bleeding revenue and not able to sort of occupy our parks. But yeah, South Africa is such a great country. So whether it's national parks or provincial parks or privately run parks, there's so many outdoor areas and locations where people can get out of the city environment and into a safe space and just enjoy our natural heritage, because we really are blessed in this country.
Chris, if I can ask you, because I know you've visited all of your parks, tell us about the different ones, like the out of the way ones. I know we've got parks, I gave the list, and ice and, you know, Okrabi's and all these ones that people don't think, because they always think just Kruger, you know. So tell us about sort of the different ones, and which one of the parks is your favorite and why? I know you're a birder, so you're always looking at bird hives and things like that.
Yeah, look, it's such a big thing. Like, for example, in Kruger, I love it up in the far north, where you've got a whole lot of different and special species that are coming in from Zimbabwe. There's a lot of species that spill over the border there. They sort of use the Limpopo River as a conduit. And also in the north of the park, there's less tourists, and I kind of want to be as close to nature as possible. So when I feel that it's a little bit congested, for example, when I was living in Kruger, we had a sort of anecdotal way that we described the park where north of the Olifants River up to the Limpopo, that's the true park. And then when you go further south, when you're between the Olifants River and the Sabi River, that's the zoo, because there's so many tourists and it's great big cat country and people are moving around. But then if you go further south between the Sabi River and the Crocodile River, you're not in the zoo anymore. You're in the circus, because that drive between Skukuza and Lower Sabi is known as Piccadilly Circus. There's just so many people. There's a lot of game drive, privately operated vehicles, and often it just becomes too congested. So I look for places where I can get away from the maddening crowds. And in Kruger itself, generally the further north you go, you get into more special spaces. And people say the reason we go to the south is because there's more animals there. But that's an erroneous perception. And it's probably just because it's slightly closer to the major urban hub of Gauteng.
Yes.
But getting back to your original question, what are some of the other parks that are off the beaten track? Now, there's one that you mentioned when you mentioned going to Richtersveld. I mean, that's way off the beaten track. And there, to really do it justice, you need to have access to a 4x4 vehicle, or one that can go in quite difficult terrain. But there's a lot of parks that are accessible and are on major transient routes. For example, if you're driving down from Gauteng and you're going to spend a holiday at the coast in the Eastern Cape, then you go past a park like Mountain Zebra. Yes. And in recent years, that's had a lot of attention. It's now had lion and cheetah and brown hyena reintroduced into the park. It's got buffalo and rhino there already, and of course the Cape Mountain zebra, which is a species unique and endemic to South Africa. So instead of being a park where you should just spend a night or two as a sort of stop-off destination to get to your coastal holiday, or the way back, if you're doing it on the way back, it's now a destination park where you can spend 2 or 3 days and have some stunning scenic drives.
No.
And
don't you think, sorry, Chris, don't you think that it's actually something worthwhile thinking about for our listeners and our readers, to actually think about doing that? Splitting up your holiday, because if you're going to be driving long distances and everything, it's always such a schlep in the car, is saying, okay, I'm going to do 2 days at the end or 2 days at the beginning, and actually take that time out and spend 2 or 3 days of your holiday, break the journey, and literally enjoy the game, and then go down to the beach and have fun with family and friends.
It makes so much sense, Mandy, because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I find if I have to sit in a car for an extended period, it's more exhausting than if you're doing physical exercise. Yes. Partly because of your sort of concentration on driving, but also because your back is in constant pressure point with your car seat, I guess, and you're not sort of moving around and changing pressure points like most people with spinal injuries tend to do. But yeah, getting back to what I say, a lot of people are in such a hurry to get to their end destination that they often will sort of compromise their stay in a park by not taking a day or two to just explore the place. And you don't need more than that for parks like Karoo National Park if you're driving from Johannesburg to Cape Town. Mountain Zebra we mentioned. Makala is another one if you want to go the Kimberley, the N12 route. All great little stop-off destinations. But I haven't forgotten one of your questions, which is my absolute favorite park. I can't say that with any certainty. They're all great, but there's one national park that was within a couple of hours drive of Gauteng that has the most mind-blowing drive, and that is Marikela National Park in the Waterberg. Now most parks, the sort of single track roads are gravel roads, and maybe people are a bit unsure about going along them if they maybe would encounter some large game in a sort of compromising situation. But because there's a whole lot of communication towers on top of the Waterberg that are run by the National Defence Force and by the SABC, there's a tar road that takes you from the sort of lowland areas in the bushveld right up to the sort of Waterberg Plateau, where you get the most mind-blowing views. And because it's tar, I've been up it many times in my little sort of sedan car. And the nice thing at the top, you've got a tar road and you can get out of your vehicle in safety. The elephants and the lions and leopards and all that shouldn't go up to that sort of high altitude location, and you can get out and move around over quite a considerable distance. There's a lot of unique birds. There's one of the world's, but South Africa's largest Cape vulture colonies right there. So you get these big, massive things like prehistoric dinosaurs flying low over your head, and some of the birds and animals at high altitude seem to lose their fear of humans, and things like sengies, which are elephant shrews, and dassies will come right up to you, and it really is a special experience. So for people in Gauteng, that's something, and they could even go there for a day trip if they don't want to have the expense of staying in accommodation, because it is often difficult to get in, and let's face it, travel when you have to sort of book overnight accommodation can be an expensive exercise.
Yes.
So yeah, that's just one to mention.
Thanks so much. I know we've overrun our time. Thank you, Mariska and Raven, for allowing me to have a few extra minutes with Chris. I'm certainly Chris, that's just my type of park. That's my next trip. That's what I'm going to plan to do. Seeing as I can't go to my family for my birthday, I think I'm going to do that trip. Thank you.
There you go.